To clarify this, right? Do you believe God would have sexual intercourse with a woman?
I believe God has the power to do that if he wanted to, but he wouldn't want to because of his moral nature. I agree with Anthony's answer that if God had decided after the incarnation to do that, then he'd be able to do that sort of thing.
Now we're saying God could get married and have sex and have children.
I would say if God wanted to do that, and that was part of his plan or something.
So let me.
I'm so damn confused.
So, when you say that God manifested in the womb of a woman into a human form, and then that was God inside the womb. So God was physically a baby in the womb of a mother, and then God, the creator of the universe, who's still all together, physically came out of the womb of a mother. To me, again, that, and I don't know if anybody else finds that troubling, but
what's the troubling part? What's the argument?
all of it. It's not an argument. Again,
that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Can I ask one question for clarification? And this is just, I just want to know what you're saying. Are you saying that God can't do that, or he just wouldn't do that?
Excellent.
Because there's a difference. There's things I can't do and things I just wouldn't do.
Agreed. So, when we talk about God, and you guys have debated with atheists, so you already know that whole God can't lift a rock thing, right? That there are certain things that are against the nature of the greatness of God as it is, right? From that God, if you can say, can God make a rock he can't lift? Well, it's not really a question that you ask, because from the nature of God is greatness, right? That he's able to do all things, right? So it's like saying, can Anthony be a man and woman at the same time? Which now we're in California, but it ain't happening, bro, right? Right? So that there's right. So from the nature, they're one or the other, whatever they think they are. All right. So, right. So here we go to me, that goes against the nature of God, right? Because this is something that is human, born from wombs and breastfeeding and burping and peeping and pooping. This is not something I can attribute to God, right? In my belief, right? In what I understand to be correct. Again, and I love to have a conversation, and we're having a conversation, but like I said, I'm not going to force Islamic belief on you. If you have an issue with the creed, aqidah, then you have the right not to believe it. It's your right. Allah will judge between me and you. It's not a problem, right? But my job is to present, okay? So in your presentation that I asked you for, and I appreciate the presentation that God physically, not, by seeing or sight, was in the womb of a woman, came out of vaginas. That's against the nature of God in what I see. Okay, that again, that's my personal belief.
So just to give the simple version, when he asked, can he do it or would he do it? Which one of those were you addressing there? So to me, it sounded like you, in some sense, were addressing both. But I think the fundamental claim is that he can't do it. It's against his nature.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Is that right? Sure. I mean, as an example, like if you were to ask me, can God ride a bicycle? Right. I would say, well, I don't think he would, but he could if he wanted to. For some reason, God could take on a form and ride a bicycle. Just like, if you're talking about, the Quran and Allah speaking on the fire, I don't know what you believe there. I believe God could do that.
I do too.
There's that distinction.
Sure.
I believe God can enter into his creation in the form of a human being, or God's more along the lines of, well, I have the power to do that, but there's no way I would do that. It's beneath me or something like that.
So let me just give you an example, right? And I think it'll clarify this, right? Do you believe God would have sexual intercourse with a woman?
I believe God has the power to do that if he wanted to, but he wouldn't want to because of his moral nature.
Thank you. So let's say a wife. That's not immoral to have sex with a wife, right? I mean, you have a wife, I'm assuming. So I'm sure you have intercourse, right?
Lots.
Right. I don't know. She might watch the video and put a different comment. Take it easy, all right?
All right.
So now the point there being that that's not immoral, right? So would God do that? Get wife and have sex with her?
Yeah, but again, it's not a question of power or ability. It's a question of he wouldn't.
It's against his nature, right?
Yeah. So
thank you.
Is that what you're saying?
Hold on. I'm asking you, if somebody was to ask you, can God get married and have sex with a woman? What would you
clarify, say, as far as power, God has the ability to do anything that doesn't entail a contradiction or a couple qualifications like that. As far as things that he would actually do, he's not going to contradict his own moral nature.
Thank you. So I would say again, God would not contradict his own nature by being born out of the vagina of a woman.
And
so we're on the same page.
When you say that he wouldn't contradict his nature, you're thinking more in terms of metaphysical quality. And what I mean here is just his greatness, for example. You're not thinking mostly in terms of moral categories. You're thinking in terms of greatness. This sort of thing is beneath him. I think is that correct?
Let me answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think I gave the answer exactly with the analogy that I gave, right?
Okay.
Just like Anthony, if I was to ask you, right, as I asked David, could God get a wife and have sexual intercourse with her? You would say that's against the nature of God. I'm assuming, right?
So what I would say.
Oh, what would you say?
That's why I was trying to clarify.
Go ahead.
Were you making it more metaphysical or moral? My answer is, would God do this sort of thing? You're saying it's contrary to his greatness, and my whole point is precisely that's why Jesus needed to become a human being, because the sorts of things that Jesus did are otherwise outside of the parameters of what is possible within his divine nature. God, for example, cannot die. How could he die then unless he took a human nature?
Okay.
Right? So what I'm getting at is you're not presenting a contradiction so much that God couldn't do this. You just think that your God wouldn't do this. So it's not so much a metaphysical problem as it is for you something else. That's what it seems to me. Yeah.
So you are saying that God could and
did
have sex with a woman?
If Jesus wanted to get married, absolutely. Do you think it's contrary to the nature of God for people to have these? So let me put it this way.
You're saying God did have sex with a woman?
No.
So when I was saying you jumped out, right?
No, that's not all I said.
So
He said yes before you finished.
So you see?
You said.
Come on, even it out. Come on.
So you see why you should let me finish before you say yes?
You said
right, David?
Yeah,
right, David?
No.
See, it's too late. You're Muslim.
Okay.
Should we do the Shahada now or later?
No. So listen. So that's.
Why don't you let me finish what I'm saying before you respond?
Okay.
How about that?
I know what you were saying.
No, you didn't.
Go ahead.
Because I was saying, do you think God could have sex with a woman? And you said he did.
What?
What, Anthony? That's true.
If you're right, man.
What are we doing?
That's fine. No, that's good.
I think I thought you said. Again, I think you added something on after you started answering, but
because I hadn't finished.
You were saying.
I didn't add anything.
Do you think God could have sex with a woman? And Anthony was saying, if that were part of his plan, that once he had entered creation as Jesus of Nazareth, then as a human being, he would have the ability to do that.
So let me say
interesting. That's a new thing too. I've never heard a Christian say that before.
Let me explain something. Can I say this? No, I didn't get to finish because we got.
But see, he and then.
You're answering him, so maybe.
Go ahead.
No, come on. We can have fun here.
Okay,
guys.
go ahead. Have fun. Let's have fun, man. I'm having fun.
Yeah. So let me explain something about our view of morality. I don't know where you're at on this.
We'll find out.
In terms of the nature of man, right? Obviously, we all agree man's a creature. He's dependent on God, doesn't exist apart from God. Would stop to exist if God willed him to stop existing, right? Man, if God willed for man to stop existing, he would stop existing. Right?
Do you want me to?
No, but what I'm getting at is this. We believe man was made in the image of God, and so man is to reflect God in his character. Image doesn't mean man looks like God, right? That's not what we mean. But we believe that man has certain characteristics that are, man, unlike other creatures, can reason, can know its creator, can worship him, at least in the way that man can. That's not true. Other creatures, I'm not saying everything glorifies God. We all agree on that, right? What I'm getting at is the morality that we have is a reflection of what God is like. The reason we're to have no other gods is because there are no other gods, right?
Good, I'm with that. One God.
Right.
No kids, no parents.
Second commandment is don't worship idols or worship God. We would say, in fact, if you're Salafi, you're closer to my view on this. We're not to worship God in any other way other than what he has commanded. Right? We agree on that.
I'm just listening.
Right, okay. I think we agree on that. I'm just going to tell you. Like we can't invent
You're Salafi?
things. We can't. You could say I'm a Salafi version of Christianity.
We agree that if we were, we agree that if we were Muslims, we'd probably be Salafi.
How about this? How about we agree? When you become Muslim, you'll become Salafi. How's that?
You become reformed.
Reformed in Islam. All right, go ahead.
So what I'm getting at then is that what we have in morality are a reflection of what God expects us to be like as His creatures, as His image bearers.
I'm going to disagree, but I'm going to let you finish out of respect.
But so you understand, the reason why I say that there's nothing that God approves of, that if He became a human being, He would live by that same law. I mean, He would reflect that in His character. He wouldn't be an atheist.
So let me.
He wouldn't be an idolater.
I mean, that didn't make sense, right? How could you be atheist and you are God, right? So let me.
So I'm telling you, it reflects.
Can I
His
respond
character.
now?
But this responds to you. This responds to you asking if God became a human being. At least this is what I was thinking you were asking. Would this be possible for Him to do? And I'd say yes.
Okay.
Okay, now he gets 3 minutes on
It's all right. It's all right.
That's good.
Let's just
I
go.
didn't know you were timing it. I thought you were.
That's actually good. That's actually good.
That's good. That's
It's
good.
okay. You guys can speak. Don't worry about it.
You're definitely going to want to do that when Sam comes over.
He speaks.
Yeah.
He yaps a lot.
You say like 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
Everybody.
2 minutes, something like that.
David Wood is saying Sam yaps a lot. I got you.
Sam will talk your ears off, just so you know.
I gotta invite you for tea, man. You're cool. All right. And you too, Anthony.
Thank you.
We gotta even it out.
you. Oh,
even
yeah,
it out.
even
All
it
right.
out.
All right. So God, the Creator, has His set of rules that are separate from us, the creation. Okay. Even if God, na'udhu billah, like we seek refuge from Allah from this kind of thing, even if you try to say that God was on earth, I don't believe that God needed to poop or pee or rest or get angry and lose his senses as humans do. For example, no, let me finish, Anthony. There is what we call pleading insanity. Right? Like if you go to court and let's say you're married, like for example, and you come home and you find some dude in bed with your wife, and you're like, this is crook, homie. Like you get crazy on him, you beat him, right? And you go to court, and they say, hey, you know what? You beat a person. You will say, well, I was out of my senses. In a human court, we would accept that. We would say, hey, you know, temporary insanity. We plead insanity, right? We would accept because that's humans, right? So that's moral because you didn't know what you were doing. I don't believe that that's God's morality. God's above all of that. Let me finish, Anthony. What am I at, right?
1.5.
1.5, right? So when God created humans, He made the rules and regulations like marriage and inheritance and sexual intercourse and needs and desires, and sex is a desire. Getting hungry, getting tired, losing your senses because you're so hungry you need to eat. Those are human qualities. We don't give those to Allah. So that's why we would not agree on that point.
But you didn't even represent my point accurately.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my point
I thought you did.
My point had to do with morality, and
I did too. I talked about morality. For example, somebody pleading insanity, we morally accept.
But I don't think we should morally accept that.
Really? Okay, so let me understand your point
A
then.
person is either, if a person happens upon somebody sleeping with his wife, he's either justified in taking the person's life or he isn't.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Anthony, you come home.
Yeah, I'm saying.
And you some dude in bed with your wife. What would you do?
He's either justified.
What would you do?
Well, but that's a different question.
Why? You don't want to answer it now, Anthony?
No. We're asking about the question of what's moral. It's not what would you do.
Okay, so what would you do? Because you would act morally.
I don't think I'm the standard of morality, right?
Well, I think you're somebody who tries to be moral. I hope.
Of course.
Do you try to live a moral life?
But both of us recognize we're creatures.
Okay.
We make mistakes.
Exactly.
Yes.
And God is not.
Right.
So those feelings.
God, he's
good.
He's eternal.
Perfect.
Immutable.
He doesn't get hungry.
That's right.
He doesn't get tired.
But
he doesn't need to go to the bathroom.
Those aren't moral issues.
No, but this again. So that's the thing. He doesn't lose his ability to judge, right? Okay.
I wouldn't say
so
that
so when a human being does at certain times, right?
But you're
morally
talking about morality.
I'm talking about morality, Anthony.
You're talking about pooping and peeing.
No. Let's talk about this, okay? Let's say somebody he is unable to. Are you looking over there or looking over here?
But I heard that.
All right. Don't worry about it. Allah protects us. Don't worry about it.
But maybe He protects you by using this catheter.
A future Muslim, inshallah. Tell you. All right. So let's take this, okay? You get somebody moral, right? A moral human being, okay?
You think
goes.
Jesus was moral?
I believe Isa ibn Maryam was very moral.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, if you take a moral human being as a human being, he can make mistakes, right? Human beings can't make mistakes?
Yeah, but that's a
Wow.
false.
Wow. I just said as a human being we can make mistakes.
No, but you were saying you're using this to talk about Jesus.
You
I'm
brought
saying
Jesus.
no.
I'm saying as a human
But
being.
Jesus did not.
Okay, so let's just talk about humans.
Do you think Jesus sinned at all, according to the Quran?
I don't believe that I have any hadith or ayah in the Quran that mentions
So we agree
Jesus.
on that.
Let me finish. Jesus sinning, but could he, as a human being, make a mistake in judgment? He could. Any human being can.
Does the Quran
right?
say that? That Jesus
Sure.
could make a mistake?
Okay, so let me explain it, right? خلق الإنسان ضعيفا, for example, right? Insan has weaknesses. That's in the Quran. And Jesus, if you and me, and at least as a Muslim, I can say he was an insan, he was human, then the Quran tells that he has weaknesses. But Allah has no weaknesses. Separation. Right? Now you feel me. So as a human being, we make mistakes. We make lapses in judgment that morally we're not held accountable for. Right? That's a lapse in judgment. We're talking about morality now. I'll give you another example. You're driving, right? And you are going a certain speed. You see somebody crossing. You think that at a certain break point, you're good. You try to brake, but you still hit them. It's an accident. Right? You made a lapse in judgment. You go to court, you say, you know, I tried, they came out of nowhere, I tried to brake as best as I could, I made a lapse in judgment, and the court tells you, you know what, you made a lapse in judgment, but it's not a sin. It's not a criminal act. You didn't intend for it to be. So you get a pass because you're human. God is not like that. God is perfect. God's judgments are perfect. He doesn't have that human shortcoming of lapse in judgment.
Okay, and my response to that is, you're working in terms of an understanding of human nature from the Christian perspective, which is post-fall. Man
Post
is
what?
not post-fall. You know that we don't agree on the fall, but
Hold on.
you know what that is, right? The fall. God made man. God made Adam.
Okay.
Adam sinned against God.
Okay.
God didn't make Adam as an already guilty individual. Adam was upright.
Okay, I just want to understand this then. So God made Adam, right? And he had the ability to make judgments.
Yes.
And he, oh, can I finish, bro? So when he chose to eat, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What I'm getting at is, you're taking what's true of mankind by virtue of the fall, and you're now applying that to Jesus. See, I don't think Jesus made errors in judgment. I don't think he made moral mistakes. I don't think he made any mistakes. And I don't think the Quran says he does. In fact, I think the Quran makes him an exception to the rule. So all I'm getting at is these sorts of arguments against the incarnation don't really work. When we say that God became man, and you object and say, but God can't eat, and I'm saying you're missing the point. He's eating because he became man. It's only if God can't become man that he can't eat. So that's not an argument against the idea that God could become man. And so all you're giving me are arguments that presuppose or beg the question against the incarnation. You understand what I'm saying? At least what I think, you know?
Again, so let's go back to this again,
Okay.
right? Saying that God needs to go to the bathroom, right? To me, is against the nature of God. He doesn't have needs. He doesn't. Let me finish now, bro. How long was that, right?
I'm putting my finger
All
up.
right,
You
you
know
keep your
you
finger
know
up
I
the
have
whole
an
time.
issue.
How about that,
There
right?
you go.
There
Hey,
you go.
don't you have that
It's a
on your,
shahada finger.
yeah?
Like, take a picture. Future Muslim right here. I feel you. All right. So now, when you say God having to go to the bathroom is against the point, that is the point, that God doesn't have those weaknesses that humans have. Those are against the nature of God. To have to use the bathroom, to have to sleep because he's tired, to have to worry about making the right judgment because he hasn't had enough nutrition. Those things, to me, those things and God's perfect nature cannot mix, just as we would say, at least David said, that it would be against the nature of God to get married and have sex, and you said it would be, so I don't know, you guys can work that out at home, but I think that is not the nature of God to have those necessities.
Now, you're only reiterating the point that I was asking you to address. The issue that we're trying to discuss is whether or not God could become man. God could become incarnate. You're raising objections that presuppose that he couldn't already. Okay, so that's not an argument against it. That's known in logic as begging the question. So you're saying God as God doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't die. I agree. It's by virtue of the incarnation that God eats, sleeps, dies, and so forth. So that's not an argument against the possibility of God becoming man. That's an argument that assumes he couldn't become man. Okay? You understand? So for example, if our argument was, could I get married and have children? And then, you know, you're arguing that I can't, and I'm arguing that I can. And you keep arguing that you can't get married and have children because right now you don't have any children, you're not married, and so forth. But that wouldn't be an argument against whether I could or couldn't get married and have children. It'd just be an argument that right now I'm not married and couldn't have children. So what I'm asking you to address is the fundamental point: could God become incarnate? Not repeat. If God would be going to the bathroom, God would eat, God would sleep, God would die, God would rise again, right? Victorious over death, as proof against the incarnation, because that all presupposes the incarnation, and it begs the question that we're actually trying to get at the bottom of.
Okay, so let me say this again, because I think when me and David were talking, you kind of zoomed out because I addressed. So the question here again gets to be one of those things that, can God make a rock he can't lift? Well, we would answer that by saying that's against the nature of God being all powerful, right?
I would say it's no. I would say that's
God
absurd.
can?
No. It makes no sense to ask.
Exactly.
No. Listen, I'm saying that those two things. You know, a rock so heavy, making a rock so heavy, lift it.
Yes.
You're asking if he can perform illogical feats are not feats at all.
Thank you.
Right. That's what you're asking.
Exactly.
But
that's my point.
I don't think God. But see, I don't think that God becoming a human being
is exactly the same thing.
That. You do,
right? Yeah.
And that's why I'm asking you to
Excellent.
to demonstrate that.
Excellent.
So all you're doing is begging the question.
No, I'm not. Let me explain it again. Okay. When I asked David, for example, could we say that God gets a wife and has sex and has children and things like that? You said that would be against the nature of God, right?
I meant like God just.
Yeah, so we're just talking about God.
Like,
yeah, I'll give you an example, right? And I think it'll clarify this, right? Do you believe God would have sexual intercourse with a woman?
I believe God has the power to do that if he wanted to, but he wouldn't want to because of his moral nature.
Thank you.
I agree with Anthony's answer that if God had decided after the incarnation to do that, then he'd be able to do that sort of thing.
Now we're saying God could get married and have sex and have children.
I would say if God wanted to do that, and that was part of his eternal plan or something.
So let me ask you.